welcome you to this committee meeting, I suppose, a community forum where we're going to discuss aspects of this high school we've been talking about and hearing about for quite a while here in Alpine. The last formal meeting of this kind where we've asked the community to come together that I'm aware of was 1999. And we are getting close to some deadlines, and so I thought it was appropriate to have a meeting. What I would like to do is open the meeting, if we could, with a moment of silence in respect for the victims and those impacted in both Santana and Granite Hills. So if you'd all join me in 30 seconds of silence. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome the panel, and before I do, there are two changes in the panel. I think nice changes. But two people were unable to make it tonight. One is Granger Ward, and the other is Tom Robinson. Granger Ward, as you I'm sure know, is the superintendent at the Grossmont High School District, and Tom Robinson is with the Office of Education. Both are unable to make it due to the shootings. They both have commitments that have come up as a result of those tragedies. So I'm sure we can all understand why they're not here. But we do have two replacements. I'll first go down the line and introduce the people to you. We have on the my far right, your far left, Owen Sweeney. And Owen Sweeney is the Executive Director of District Financial Services for the San Diego County Office of Education. Next to him, we have Dr. Jerry Ansell, who I'm sure is familiar to most people here. He's the superintendent of the of the Alpine Union School District. Was that a faux pas, Jerry? Freudian. And next to him, on my right, we have Rob Turner, who's business manager, Alpine Union School District. And a welcome guest panel member is our supervisor from the 2nd District, Diane Jacob. And next to Diane, we have Ken Clark, who's the assistant superintendent at Grossmont Union High School District. And last but not least, we have Lisa Snell, who's the director of the education program for Reason Public Policy Institute. And we appreciate Lisa. She drove all the way down from Riverside County and changed a flight to Washington, D.C. that was supposed to be tonight, and she's doing that now tomorrow. So, that's our panel. What I would like to do tonight is allow each panel member to, first of all, give deeper introductions of themselves, more thorough introductions, and speak to the issues that they are here to address tonight. And one other caveat is, as many of you know, I'm on the school board here, and when we asked the school board's permission to allow Dr. Ansell and Rob Turner to be here, the one provision was that I make it clear to everybody that they can speak only on behalf of the Alpine School District. They will make no assertions as to opinions or decisions made, because quite frankly there haven't been any by the board as to the high school. But they do have, with the building of the middle school, they have a great deal of information on what it takes to build a school and the problems perhaps associated with it. So, I would like now to start with Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you all for inviting me here tonight. Just a couple of comments, too, I'd like to make. Obviously, I'm representing the San Diego County Office of Education, and anything I say, obviously, would not be really too relevant in terms of what's happening here locally. So I can give you general information in terms of the unification process, kind of what's happened up and down the state, and maybe what's happened in other unification processes. Also, I can answer probably some general business-related questions regarding the operation of the school district in terms of the financing and things of that nature. It's too bad Tom Robinson is not here tonight. Tom was basically the the expert on bond financing and development of facilities. So it's unfortunate he can't be here, but any questions maybe related to that, we could probably try to work out among ourselves, and if I can't get answers, I can probably get them for you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Next, Dr. Jory Ansel.
Good evening. I bring with you this evening 38 years of experience in public education. I've been here. My pleasure to serve you as superintendent of the Alpine Union School District for 16 years. During the course of my tenure, we've built 3 schools. We're almost complete, Joe McLean Middle School, and seen the student population more than double. With that, I bring experience related to operating a school district. I've worked in a unified school district, so I can share some of that experience as well as working in the various departments in both Santee School District, where I served 15 years.
Thank you, Mr. Rob Turner.
Hi, I'm Rob Turner, Business Manager for Alpine School District. I bring 24 years of school business experience, 14 in Alpine. I have been responsible for building the 3 schools in the middle school right now. Shadow Hills was actually one of the first schools in the state that was built with 100% state funds. Boulder Oaks is one of the last schools built with 100% state funds. And now we're building Jones McLean with local bond funds and some of the state proposition limited funds. With that also, we passed the bond election in 1997. So I have lots of experience, sometimes experience I wish I didn't have, but lots of experience in construction, current construction costs, and state program. Any questions that you might have about construction?
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Does it sound like it's on?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the 1960s, I was a 6th grade teacher, and I taught school at Bancroft Elementary School in the La Mesa Spring Valley School District. So as a former teacher and then as a school board member in the Humboldt School District, I served for some 17 years. I became involved in San Diego County School Boards Association and also the California School Boards Association. I served as the president of the California School Boards Association in 1987. And of course, I think most of you are aware I am now the county supervisor. With also being a parent, which I consider to be the most important part of my career, if you will, because I don't think there's anything more important than that. I have some very strong feelings about education. I have some very strong feelings about kids and what has occurred, and I'm pleased, Mark, to be able to pinch hit here tonight, and hope that if there's some questions you have for me, I'm happy to share with you based on my background.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Ken Clark, the Assistant Superintendent, Grossmont Union High School District.
Hi, and thank you for inviting us here tonight. I've got 28 years of school business experience. I've worked in 4 of the school districts, starting in Chula Vista, several elementaries, as well as my last employment was at San Marcos Unified School District, which is a K through 12 environment. I've been here since May 1 for the last year. It seems longer. But it's been very, very enjoyable. The quality board and the quality staff. I have some information here I'll share a little later on where Grossmont is with the plans for high school number 12 and some of the plans that we have for the future. We have
Thank you. And next, we have Lisa Snell.
I have no experience locally in education, but I am the education program director for a national public policy research institution. And basically what that means is that we study trends in education, and one of the issues we've looked at is the idea of unification. And I can kind of speak to what other districts in the state of California have done and what some of those experiences have been, some reasons why or why not we might want to unify, and also some of the cost issues as far as have other districts had experiences with unification that cost the district more, or cost them less, or how is that issue decided?
Thank you very much. Just as a brief comment, I always get tickled when Diane Jacobs mentions Bancroft Elementary, because that was my alma mater. And anything that I've turned out in the way, if I'm good or bad, I can blame it all on Diane and Bancroft Elementary. Those were good years. Those were good years. Some people have asked me why I got so active and involved in wanting to see a high school here. And for me, quite frankly, it's one main reason, and it's safety more than anything else. It's just, I believe that our kids have been bussed down that hill long enough. And I learned something, and I'm going to introduce one of the board members from Grossmont that's here. He told me, and I didn't know this, I found this surprising, but he told me at breakfast this past Friday that there are 2 traffic fatalities a year that occur in the Grossmont district in transporting our kids from Alpine to either now Granite Hills or Steel Canyon. And safety is even a bigger issue now that we have Steel Canyon, because I don't know of a way. I'm born and raised San Diego. I don't know of a way to get to Steel Canyon without going through a whole bunch of windy, dangerous, narrow roads. So that's the reason I believe we need a school up here. Our kids have paid the price. Our families have paid the price, I think, long enough. And I think, doggone it, we deserve it, a school up here in Alpine. And in fact, I thought we deserved it when Steel Canyon got it, but that's history now. Let me introduce, if I may, a few folks that are in the audience that will perhaps have something to say. First, if I could, the Alpine school board members. Other than myself, I know we have Chuck Taylor, we have Joanne Brinstead is here. Any other Alpine school board members? Okay. Grossmont school board members. I see Ted Crooks is here, and I see Gary Cass is there. Any other Grossmont school board members? Okay. At this point, would Joanne, is there anything you'd like to say to address? Okay. Ted?
No, not particularly.
Okay.
Answer the question.
That's fine. And you're all right, Gary?
Here for the ride.
Okay. There's another group locally in Alpine that has worked, I think, extremely hard over the last few years to try to get a high school in this community. And it's the high school committee. And I know that we have a lot of those members here. And if you don't mind standing up, because I think we should give you an applause, because we are where we are today, I believe, in great part to your efforts. So everyone, if you don't mind, that's a member of the high school committee from Alpine, if you don't mind standing up. And of that group, the 2 founders, as I was told, please tell me if I'm wrong, were pretty much Chuck Taylor and Al Haven were the ones who, with others, got that initiated. And Chuck, would you like to make any comments about why you got behind it and why you started, the impetus for the committee?
I did it to fulfill a campaign for us. I stood out in front of Daniels weekend after weekend about 3 years ago, and people asked me why I was running. I said I had 4 children, 3 in the district and 1 about to be in the district, and I wanted a high school up here. So I got elected, and I really think it was because of that, because that was the only question I was ever asked. And the week after I got elected, I met with Al Haven at his home, and then the following week, people started coming to the meetings, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the story.
Thank you, Chuck. Well, that was worth it. Thanks for all that time you spent walking up there, Chuck. We also have, Al, would you like to comment, please?
I don't know if I was founder. There was this had many parents. Chuck approached me and said, "We ought to have a high school here." And I've got 27 years in the business. I was a superintendent here once upon a time. And I told him from my experience that Alpine is too small to have a high school. It won't work, and we don't have enough kids, and economically it can't happen. We looked at it, we got hold of the data and started to look at it, and sure enough, it was possible. And with everything I can see is that the state funding does exist, and we have enough kids, and all it takes is the will. And so the committee's been working for 2 years along this line, and here we are. I think everybody's out excited.
Thank you very much. Another person who's in our audience that I'd like to introduce is a board member with the County Board of Education. He's in the back, Jim Kelly. We appreciate you coming up here. Also, I'm pleased to introduce to you, both representing the Weapai Band of Kumeyaay Indians. We have Donald Butch, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, and William Micklin. Where are they? There. Would you two like to say anything? You're welcome to if you'd like.
Will Micklin with the Weapai Band. I'm bringing you my greetings from Michael Garcia, the Vice Chairman, who would be here today, but he was called to Sacramento for a meeting, and Harlan Pinto is not feeling real good. But we just wanted to come here and tell you that we are extremely interested in education for the community. We're longtime members of the community. Chairman Tony Pinto of the Weapai Band, who tells me that he was the first of the Kumeyaay that attended public school in San Diego County. His family sent him there to see if he'd come back alive. He did. They all went to school. So we're extremely interested. Chairman Pinto's concern has been for children throughout his life. He's addressed that need in this community with our work with the Southern Indian Health Council. We are about one of the 7 member tribes that operate that facility. And of course, our current project is to build a new clinic both here and at Campo, and to essentially endow that clinic with proceeds from our other enterprises, which we estimate to be about $100 million over the first 15 years. That's one of his interests. The other of his interests, of course, with children is education. And we are intending to be a benefactor to education in this community. So we are very interested in meeting with the high school committee, with Mr. Price, with everyone that's interested in education in the community to figure out exactly how we can be a benefactor. And obviously with us, we're not experts in the field of education. What we can provide is a contribution of monies towards the operation of the high school. That's our intent. That's what we'd like to do. We'd like to work with you to get that done. So we look forward to working with you now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. That does bring up a question. Do we need money, Mr. Clark? Let me, if I might, go down a few questions. Is there anybody who's a dignitary here that I didn't mention? Just stand up and say, I'm a dignitary. No? No one else? Okay, well, if you walk in later, let me know. A couple questions I have. First, how much will it cost? So a good segue. I have heard, when I first started with the committee and hearing about the high school, I was hearing figures of $40 million, and at the last meeting I heard figures of $70 million. And so I don't know what it will cost. We'll ask the people here to see if they have some idea. I will say this, that one of the things that I'm quite excited about that they were looking into, and I understand it's still part of what they're looking into, is the idea of a school that is not just a high school. A school that will incorporate a high school, maybe a junior college, a full college, maybe incorporate also our community library. And I just think that would be a wonderful thing if we could figure out how to make that work. And if that happens, it's because of the people at this table and the hard work that they've done so far, the high school committee, if we can pull that off. And would we be the first in the state if we had something like that? Or among the first anyway? No?
Among.
You'd be among the first. Okay. So it's not groundbreaking, so it should be easy then. Okay. But as far as how much will it cost, Mr. Sweeney, would you like to tackle that?
Well, I think a lot would have to do with the type of facilities and, like anything else, like when anyone builds a home or something, how much is your home gonna cost? What kind of a home do you really want? I think your cost ranges could be all over the place. And also it depends on the land and where you build this particular facility. But I agree with you, Mark. I think I've heard prices anywhere from maybe 35 to 40 million, maybe all the way up to 75 or 80 million. So it would depend. Until you kind of probably break down the type of facility you want, kind of narrow it down in terms of what the square footage is, what kind of a facility it is it going to be photovoltaic in terms of electricity these days, or what kind of a facility you're going to build, that would much determine the cost. So probably an architect or someone like that would probably want to bring in early in the stages to try to develop that process.
Could you quickly just add to that how the school is paid for? Whatever that dollar figure is, where does that money come from?
That's a good question. I figured you could answer that one.
I mean, besides the Weapai tribe, we appreciate it.
Well, obviously there's the typical way to obviously fund the school, of course, is through a general obligation bond. And I'm sure you're all aware of that, and I think we can talk about that a little bit later on. I know Rod Kern has some figures and so forth. There is also monies available at the state level, and at the last forum we had up here, kind of about a month or so ago, I think Tom Robinson spoke to the fact that right now there really is no state money available. So a lot of talking about state funding is subject to conjecture in terms of getting state money, and right now there really is none. There's not another state bond scheduled until probably March of 2002. So right now, the way Tom sees it anyways, as of a few weeks ago, and maybe some of the other people could speak to this, is that the money that would be available from the state would be very, very iffy at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, would you like to?
I share where Grossmont is with the
Mark?
Yeah, a little louder, I'm sorry.
where Grossmont is with the planning for 12th High School. In May of '99, the governing board commissioned a facility steering committee.
Let's figure you're on CNN.
Is this better?
Better?
In May of '99, the board commissioned the establishment of a facility steering committee. So for the last year and a half, that committee met with representatives from each of the school districts, existing schools, as well as Alpine, have been meeting and developing a plan for each of the school sites. As you can imagine, some of our schools, those goes back to the early 1900s, and so there's lots and lots of needs for those facilities. The draft that was presented to the governing board for the long-range facility master plan came to something exceeding $333 million, and that includes the 12th High School. The numbers that Mr. Price mentioned both have some accuracy. We've done some projections as far as the cost of the land, which is speculative for right now until we specifically identify a site. Also, the cost to develop that site and the architecture, engineering, as well as the building construction. As you may or may not be aware, we applied to the State Department of Education for an application for funding the new school in May of last year, and at the State Allocations Board, we were approved for 1,765 grants for students who were exceeding the capacity. And the way that was determined was using the grant bills attendance rate. If we utilized the capacity of the whole Grossmont Union High School District, we would not qualify for nearly as much as we would by using a single attendance rate. Since Granite Hills is one of our more impacted schools, we utilized that option and determined the application and made that application to the state. What that means is that we are eligible for approximately $7,800 per student grant, or some $13.7 million from the state. Using a projection of $15 million for the cost of the site, The state will reimburse districts 1/2 of that cost and/or appraised value. Site development, the state will also share in that cost 50%, and we're projecting the cost there of some $12 million, so the state will share in half of that. When you get to the building construction, it's based on the grants that I just shared. Those grant amounts, in most cases, will not construct a school for some 1,800 students. You can imagine the state grant is not on the high side, it's on the low side. So our projection for a high school of some 1,800 students is approximately $43 million. If you subtract from that the $13.7 million, that requires a district contribution of some $29 million. So these numbers are included as part of our long-range facility master plan. There are obviously projections at this time until we identify a specific site and get a plan laid out. We're looking at a site of some 50 to 60 acres. That is a challenge in the Alpine Blossom Valley area. You can build a site on less than that. As I was leaving San Marcos, we had a site of some 36 acres, and we're utilizing some two-story construction to economize on the field sites. The board has received updates from the board periodically from its original discussion back in '99, and as late as March we had an update on the high school number 12, and in January we had an update on the long-range facility master plan. We've also, at the last board meeting, commissioned a opinion survey, selected a firm, and we're in the process now of comparing that survey for the possibility of a bond election in March of 2002. And much of that survey will determine the capacity or the amount of the bond which we solicit from the taxpayers. Under Prop 39, which is the new proposition that allows districts to receive approval at the 55% plus one election, our bonding capacity at $30 per $100 of assessed value is some $178 million. If you add to that some $29 million, which approximately $28 to $29 million that we would receive from the state, that's half the site cost, half the site acquisition cost, as well as our student grant amount. Plus some contributions, 50-50 contributions, we would hope it is higher, but conservatively speaking for modernization, the maximum amount that we would receive from the taxpayers and the state is some $250 million. Well, the needs based on our long-range facility master plan at 353, you can see there that we're some $100 million short of funding all those needs. So depending on what the opinion survey comes up with, we'll need to go back to the facility steering committee and obviously scale down some of those needs. Some of those things were on the wish list, but many are health and safety issues which will be at the top of the list. So, our projection right now, like I said, or specific identification of the site is some $70 million total for both site development and building construction, of which about 28 million would come from the state, and about 42 or 43 million would need to come from district contributions.
So it's just a summary kind of question then. If you did go after a bond for $250 million, 179 is the max?
178 under Prop 39. We could go higher if we didn't want to utilize Prop 39, but that would mandate or require a 2/3 vote plus one. And as Mrs. Valley has experienced and Colorado School District, those are difficult challenges.
Okay, so under Prop 39, your bonding capacity is 178, that's what you'll go for. It's possibly.
That's dependent upon the opinion survey that we get back. If
Just so everyone knows, there is a survey now happening, correct, around the district, or is it going to happen?
We've commissioned the consultant to develop that. That will be occurring in the next month.
Okay. So of the 100, let's say the number is arbitrarily 178 million. Of that, approximately 50 to 70 million would be designated for the Alpine High School, and the balance for, okay, tell me where I'm wrong, and the balance for renovation of your existing school.
Well, those numbers
General.
need to be decided. The $70 million is incorporated in the $353 million and that includes modernization, contributions for all those sites in addition to the new high school. You know, we have the capacity to generate $178 million plus about 28 million from the state for growth, as well as probably $40 to $42 million for modernization. Those three components add up to about $250 million. Therefore, in the total long-range facility master plan, we're some $100 million plus short. So we'd have to go back and economize, and one of those considerations would be looking at the new school and taking some of those contributions from.
Right, thank you. Supervisor Jacob, how would the county at all, and hopefully that's going to be perfect, how can the county get involved to help us in this financing? Did they just give us the 200 million?
I was counting up the numbers. The county is having to spend $17 million additional dollars over what was budgeted for electricity. All of the school districts in the county will be spending some $45 million over budget. I'll bet if we look at cities and all the other public agencies, Mark, I think we could probably build this school quite easily and buy the land with the overcharges of the electricity. All we need to do is get those greedy generators to give us back our money. The county involvement in a case of building a school is very little, frankly. From the standpoint of support, I agree that Alpine should have its own high school. I think our schools, our high schools in particular, are too big. That is not the fault of the Grossmont Union High School District officials. That is the fault of the way the rules and regulations are at the state. But you have an opportunity to do something here that's unique, and where there's a will, there's a way. And if this community wants a high school, and you're all together on this, we'll find a way to do it, and I'm here to help you. Now, when you begin finding a piece of land in the unincorporated area, a school district pretty much can buy up a piece of land, and then it becomes a school site. Whether the county wants it there, or whether the local planning group wants it there or not, we can all have our input. A school district has to go to the county planning commission for a plan conformance finding, but it's state property. Schools are an arm of state government. And so it's a lot like the Indian reservations in terms of its sovereignty. Now, there are a few issues that the county gets involved in. That would be roads, it would be drainage, and flood control. So those three areas, when a school district goes to build a school in the unincorporated area, they would have to come to the county, to our Department of Public Works. The other part would be the health department. If it's septic or sewer or whatever else, that would need health department sign off. So there's very little involvement of the county. But I support your efforts, and I certainly would help you. And if there's any way that we could find a way to get some of our electricity dollars back, they're obviously your school money.
Martin, thank you. Yeah, the electrical, I was on Fox News this morning, and I made the point that shame on the politicians up in Sacramento who've allowed this thing to continue, because truly it's hurting our kids in great part, because in our own district of Alpine, we're having to set aside $50+ million in the shortfall, the billing that we owe SDG&E that they haven't called for. Well, that's money that possibly could be directed into our classrooms and help our students. So there needs to be a fix, and I want to thank you, Supervisor Jacob, for your efforts in trying to motivate a solution on that. But I think it's a politically created problem, and it's probably going to be a political solution.
Mark?
Yeah.
Can I add just a supplement to what Ken Anderson?
You want to
as a part-time politician, I can say some things that Ken is not free to say. These guys who are assistant superintendents of business in school districts are numerical wizards and spend a great deal of time doing exactly the kind of thing you do on April 14th at midnight. But they do it all year long, and they do it with great aplomb. And I think you need to realize some of the things that are contained in what Ken had to say. We've been able to justify funding from the state for Alpine on the basis of kids in East El Cajon. And it turns out that kids in Alpine aren't enough to make the kind of money that one normally expects for a high school, the facilities expected with a high school. Now, there are possibilities if Alpine were to go it alone on something that's a different, new kind of concept, but it doesn't have the sort of facilities that one normally expects from a high school. From the Grossman point of view, we're talking about a high school that has all the things you normally expect with a high school. And to do that, we've taken the overcrowding at Granite Hills because it's, the way the attendance boundaries work, it's near to Alpine, even though it may not seem like it to most of us. And been able to justify that using that overcrowding to justify the funding for a school up here. But that overcrowding actually is there because Steel Canyon is not full. And as the population shifts from Granite Hills to Steel Canyon, that will no longer be the case. Now, and obviously that's something that we need to do to reduce the overcrowding. But we took advantage of this temporary situation in order to get the authorization, which will continue to live on. So there's been a very careful orchestration here of attendances and boundaries and sorting out the application to the state in order to get as large a grant eligibility from the state as possible. And the benefit of that, obviously, is that we'll get the state will be able to justify a more complete facility, and we will be able to incorporate it in the rest of the district. But I just wanted you to be aware that that didn't just kind of automatically happen, and it wasn't just based on an Alpine population that required this maneuvering in order to get the level of funding that we have now been adjudged eligible for in the state. And that's why it's based on Granite Hills, which may seem odd, but because Granite Hills had the kids we could use to justify the school. It wasn't based on El Cap, and it wasn't based on Steel Canyon or anywhere else because they didn't have the kids to justify the school here.
Even though our kids go to those other schools, they go to Bahalba and they go to El Cap.
From the state's point of view, though, your kids also have the option. But from the point of view of the state, your kids also have the option to go to a school that's 3/4 empty.
Yeah.
And there also are not enough kids up here. There's nowhere near the number of kids in this area that there is in the overcrowding of Granite. So, but the fact that you go to Granite makes it natural for us to, makes it very easy for us to say Granite's the...
Ted, let's hold, if I could ask you, please just hold your questions, and we'll get through these, and then remember what your question is, and come on up.
Easy for you to say.
I know.
Anyway.
But you would try to hold on to them.
That's what's kind of behind the numbers here, and it took a lot of work and a lot of craftsmanship by the business staff to pull that off.
Thank you, Ted, very much. Again, that's Ted Crooks with the Board of Governors of Grossmont. Also, Mrs. Wiggins walked in, who's a fellow school board member here in Alpine, and so I just wanted to recognize Ms. Wiggins. Hi. Next question, along the lines of the finances and the money, people have asked, will our taxes go up? And who is best here to address the Prop 39 issues if we take that round on the bond? Would that, Mr. Clark?
Capacity under Prop 39 for the high school district is $30 per $100 of assessed value, as it is for the elementary, and the combination of those two make $60 for the uniform. So, I guess your taxes would be assessed at $30 per $100 of assessed value.
Okay. Anybody else like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think I can ask. People have always asked what would Alpine generate, and I asked our financial consultant who did our bonds to give me a estimation of a unified district. And first off, a unified district has a bonding capacity, which you cannot sell more bonds than a bonding capacity. It's 2.5% of the assessed valuation. Right now, we're about $1.1 billion in Alpine, so 2.5% of that is $27,800,000. So that would be the maximum amount of bonds that we could issue. But as an elementary district, we've already issued about $11 million bonds. That would fall within that cap, since it is K-12. So right now, today, and that's today, and if we unified, we wouldn't sell bonds today. It would be a few years after. Today, the bonding capacity is $16,800,000. So that's what would, if we unified today, that would be the maximum amount of bonds that we could sell. That is, again, these are all estimations. I don't tend to throw out lots of numbers. I'm sorry about the numbers. An estimation of that would be a $40 tax rate. So in Alpine only, to generate $16.8 million, it would be $40 per $100,000.
Okay, and if we build a school, presumably if we wanted a comprehensive school, we'd be talking the same kind of numbers for the school, correct? We'd be possibly still talking the $40, $50, $70 million range.
My experience with building schools is that you can go from the dollars back, or you can go from what you would like and estimate those things. You can build a school anywhere. We could have built John McQueen Middle School for $14 million. It's going to be $19 million. It just depends on what you want to see in that school. The classrooms themselves are relatively, or the less expensive part of it. They have the less doodads. They're relatively inexpensive. But as you get into some of the other things that you'd like to see, and that's always my first question to you is, well, what do you want to see in a high school? Do you want a boys and girls gym, or do you just want one gym? Do you want a football stadium? Do you want it lighted? Do you want a pool? Do you want a drama program? Do you want a music program? Do you want home out? Do you want, and everyone fine arts? Yeah, fine arts. And I'm sure there's several other things I missed. So if you're shaking your head, I think the answer is you're closer to a $70 million school. If you just want relocatable classrooms and an office and an auditorium, you're probably down into the 25 or 30 million. So, and then on and on and on and on. And I don't want to bore you.
And so whatever, if it's the 30 million or the 70 million, you're saying based on the numbers you gathered, we would only be able, if we unified, to get 16.8 million. So the difference would have to be made up.
That's today's.
By the unified.
That's that is correct.
I'm committed you to a lot here.
That's today's assessed valuation. That's based on an assumption of a 5.08% growth rate. So if it turns out to be 7% over the next few years, then that number would grow. If it turns out to be 4%, it would be less. Those are the best guesses right now.
Anybody else like to come? Ms. Sweeney?
Well, I just wanted to comment too. I mean, I know we talked a little bit earlier about some kind of a joint use facility. That would be a whole different ballgame if you get into that. And maybe if I could even ask Diane Jacobs. Diane, would there be any feel for any kind of a joint use facility up here that you could see that maybe the county could help with, or anyone at any other organization?
We worked for some time with the community on building a joint use facility with the Alpine School District. Originally started relocating the administration center with the sheriff station, with the library, with a fire station. Those talks are still continuing. It's kind of dwindled down at this point to a joint fire and sheriff's facility, which we're still looking at as soon as we can nail down a site. But yes, there certainly is a possibility for joint use, and that may, whatever we end up partnering with, however that could end up, I'm certainly willing to work on it.
And that could change the configuration quite a bit, and also could maybe mitigate some of the costs too as well, depending on what we come up with. Good.
But it seems like, if I understand what Supervisor Jacob just said, the library is now not necessarily part of that. So, and I don't think we were talking about, if I remember any of the previous meetings, when we talked about joint facility, including fire and sheriff. So we'd still be looking at a full multi-use facility.
Libraries, we've done quite a few joint use libraries in the East County. Descanso is a joint use. We're doing a joint use. We just finished it in Potrero. It's where the school district has the property and a county library that is situated on that property. So it works both for the kids that go to the school and also for the community at large, and you work out an operating agreement so that everybody agrees on who uses the library, what materials, and all that kind of thing. We're doing the same thing out in Campo. So it's really, taxpayer standpoint, it's a better bang for the buck. And if it's something that the community wants, and I know you mentioned, Mark, a library possibly being a part of this, that's a natural marriage. The sheriff's station, maybe not. That's kind of up to you. The sheriff, I don't know though. In this day and age, it might be a good idea. Maybe we better think twice about that. But the fire and the sheriff's station right now, it's in the talking stage, but it's still the talking stage, and we really don't have a site nailed down. So maybe there should be some further discussion on that.
This brings us to the area we've touched on, the concept of unification. Unification, I'm sure most of you know, but just very briefly, there seems to be a debate locally, and quite frankly, it has in many respects split certain groups in this community. People who truly want a high school and have fought for a high school in this community are sort of split over this issue, unification versus Grossmont. Unification simply would mean that it becomes part of, in essence, the Alpine district. So Alpine, instead of being a K through 8 district, would go K through 12 or whatever it would be. And that's what Mr. Turner was just referring to, that if we chose to do that, the funds available to us through a bond drive just don't happen to be there. But unification, it has worked in other communities. And that's one of the reasons that I'm happy that Lisa Snell is here. And if you could maybe speak to that, Lisa, how it's worked and where it's worked, or why it doesn't work.
Well, the biggest reason it doesn't work is if it's not financially feasible, which is why unification historically has been a very long process. It's not something that usually happens overnight, although there has been a few cases where unification has happened relatively quickly. And similar maybe to what's happened locally in Alpine and Grossmont, the discussions and the divisiveness over unification can go on for years and years before a decision is actually made. And there's actually a process that the State Board of Education requires as far as studying the financial feasibility of unification. So before you can even consider unification, you have to commission studies that show what the fiscal impact of unification would be for the district that the high school, in this case, is leaving, and also the Alpine district. So before you start talking about unification, you have to get a clear idea of what the cost to both districts that are involved would be. And one of the strategies that has been used before, and most recently, I guess, and closest to you would be the Valley Center and the Escondido unification, where basically Valley Center, I think it's, I'm trying to think of the Camuno, or I don't know what the name of the school district Valley Center was. It also was an elementary
Valley
school.
Center, Palmer.
The Palmer, right. That school, the Palmer School District, was an elementary school district, and Escondido actually built the high school through bonds, and then at a later point, the Palmer District annexed or took control of the high school that was built in their locality. So if I was going to look to an example of how unification would happen in a similar model, I would really talk to those folks in Valley Center and see how they pulled it off and look at their financial, because they are similar geographic in the sense that Valley Center is quite a long bus ride at that time for the high school students, and also Escondido is a large school district that through bonds actually built the high school. And I know that Valley Center actually paid Escondido $1 million, which is nothing, for the high school, and how they were able to make that kind of a deal and do the exchange and assume control. And one of the things that typically does happen with unification is that many times the high school is already built. So when you're thinking about unification, it's not usually the case that the district unifies and then builds the high school. In many cases, they're actually annexing or taking over an existing high school, and it's not necessarily a new high school. It may be, a new area is grown up, and there's a French high school that serves a large part of that population, and then they're able to get some kind of taxpayer support and meet the criteria by the State Board of Education, which they have, I think, 15 criteria that you have to meet in order to unify. And all of those criteria impact both the district that's unifying and the district that is giving up the high school, or in some cases it might be two districts merging completely into one district. But in this case, that's not the relevant circumstance. So again, I guess the key point here would be that it's not a quick process, that there's lots of financial feasibility studies that have to be done. And one of the reasons the districts typically unify, besides obviously the concerns that you have, safety, control of curriculum, local control, you want your kids to go to a district that's within your region. You want to have more say over the curriculum decisions. You want kids to feel like they have kind of stream continuity. Those are all some of the reasons that people give for unifying. And basically, as far as the finance on a statewide level, there is more ADA funds that can come from unifying because the high school is funded on the ADA amount at a higher rate than the elementary school district. So basically, there is more money coming into the district after unification, but it's also effective. This is difficult to explain, but basically what happens is you get a per pupil ADA average daily attendance amount for each student. The elementary district gets a certain amount and the high school district gets a certain amount, which is more. The way that those two amounts are blended is that the number of students that come from the higher district is added to the per pupil amount of the students already in the district, and then the total number of students is divided into that new amount. And again, that's hard to explain, but you get a blend that's a little bit higher, but it's not the higher rate. It's a combination of the lower and the higher. So, but you do have more revenue coming into the district as a whole once unification is complete. But the other caveat to that is that employee salaries, both certified and non-certified employees, have to go up to meet the highest district of the unification. So if the high school teachers are making more salaries, there's a certain amount of that new revenue that will go to bring everyone in the new district, the unified district, up, and that kind of gets rid of some of that revenue. So when a financial study is done of the feasibility, those are the kind of factors that they look at, and that doesn't even address the idea of building the school, which is a whole other set of revenues that you have to think about. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how the unification process works. The State Board of Education actually has a really good handbook on how to do it, and they do advocate that it is one way to consolidate because you can reduce some administration costs. Obviously, you can reduce some transportation costs if you have, so there are other places to find revenue. But overall, it's the local circumstances that determine is it financially feasible or not. And so somebody has to look at what are the highest teacher salaries, what are the ADA rates, how much would that blend bring into the district? And again, that's completely separate from the capital cost building a new school. So that's just kind of a more general perspective on the process of unification. I don't know if I answered the question, but...
Well, if I might ask a follow-up, do you have any statistics on any other districts within this state where the building of a new school was involved as opposed to just the annexing of an existing school?
No, I haven't run across a case study of that. I mean, it's been more the annexation seems to be the way where you're talking about not merging two districts, where you're talking about combining a K through 8 or K through 6 to a junior high and high school district. There hasn't been, I mean, I'm not saying that there's not an example out there, but there's not one that I know of that would really fit your circumstances.
Would it be a correct statement, then it would not be a correct statement to just arbitrarily say that if you annex the existing, let's say you annex, or you unify, so you're bringing a high school on board, regardless of whether you built it or you're annexing it, it would not be a correct statement as a general statement to say that the existing elementary school would suffer? Or is it, or?
I mean, in most cases, it's either revenue neutral or it is a little bit of an increase in revenue so that there's more monies available for the elementary school as well as the high school.
And that, of course, is based on annexation primarily.
Right, based on annexation primarily. So, because of the higher ADA primarily, the funds available for the entire district usually go up. And there's also some complicated formulas where the state, depending on what the local circumstances are, adds some to the basic revenue. So there's potential for increased funding or revenue neutral. But see, the key thing here is that if the financial feasibility study doesn't point to that to begin with, you can't unify. So there can't be an example of a unified district when revenue doesn't work because you wouldn't be allowed revenue to unify because you wouldn't get approval.
You wouldn't meet the criteria.
So because all the case studies are positive in the sense that they've all met the criteria. So it's a kind of backwards. So you have to go and look at those cases where unification has failed to see where the numbers don't work. And that's where you find your negative statistics. And again, it's the local circumstances that determine the financial feasibility.
Thank you. Before I go to Mr. Clark, see if he wants to respond to that, I want to introduce, and very pleased you're able to make it, Tom Robinson. Tom is the Senior Director of Facility Planning Services, San Diego County Office of Education. And I know that you had a trying schedule with the tragedies at the two schools, so thank you very much for making time and being here. Mr. Clark, would you care to comment or add or your thoughts?
I don't have a lot of information on unification, but I think Lisa's comments, a couple of points needs to be reiterated. That she mentioned that the higher salary gets established within that district, and the higher fringe benefits also gets established. So you need to compare that with the higher revenue. Our particular revenue in Grossmont is about $5,100, and now I'm not sure where was that, 44, something like that. So unified is somewhere in between it. So that increase ADA revenue amount needs to be able to compensate for those higher salaries at the higher district. And since Alpine pays such high salaries,
we must say that's because we do love our teachers. Thank you. Supervisor, do you have anything?
Well, of course, the ideal would be is to get the Grossmont Union High School District to cough up the money and build your school, and then you take it in and you unify the Alpine Union Unified School District. So then you get the benefit of everything. You get the new school, and you also get the additional operating money. Because when you talk about $1,500 per kid versus $4,400, that adds up to be big bucks. You have to go through all these rules and regulations at the state level, and they can become extremely onerous. A question that came to my mind, and it's like if the feasibility studies don't come out and all that you have to go through at the school, what would it take? What about a charter high school in Alpine? What about the possibility of that as an option if all else fails? I don't know. The only other thing on joint use, I might add, I forgot one thing. Another way the county could partner with the school district would be parks, building ball fields. We have many examples of that, so not only with a library, but also with ball fields and parks.
Thank you. You've mentioned charter, so let me segue, if I may, and then we'll come back to it, and introduce Beverly Greco. Beverly, just introduce you. If you'd like to comment, fine. If not, she's in the audience. She's in the back. She was in charge of the charter high school transition team at La Jolla High. And if you'd like just briefly to speak to Supervisor Jacob brought up the... no, Tom, that's fine.
I'm Beverly Greco, peer coach staff development at La Jolla High School. And then you may have read that in the newspaper, the press was crawling all over us about voting charter. And the charter is still there were two snags in the charter why we did not take the final vote. However, when we submitted to open in 2002. And one is that we're going to break ground for a new aquatic center in which the La Jolla Foundation raised the money, $8.3 million, and they're still fundraising. So we break ground on Tuesday. And in order to do that, we had to move the street. And we had some negotiations with our district that was also going to put in some money for the facility. And if we had gone charter, the community was afraid that they would renege on their obligations since we were now a charter school. So they asked us to please back off for 1 year because we've done all this fundraising for this aquatic center and this new building, and just hang in there until we break ground, and then we could possibly, then we'll submit it. So we are planning, we're moving forward to submit and open the school in 2002. Ours is kind of unique because I'm looking for the first in the state, but probably in the county, to take a look at converting a public school to a charter school. And one of the pieces that we have is the facility. And in order to use that facility under charter law, we have to pay 3% of our total income that's coming in from ADA, categorical monies, grants, or you can go 1%, which would be, you would have to incorporate. Ours is unique because we have a building, we have a land, expensive land. We have a parking problem. There are planning grants. There is no money allocated for the rest of this year, but we're looking at a charter planning grant again coming forth in October, perhaps, and then more money is coming forth with implementation. So that's, there are many issues that all stakeholders, there's two ways. Either the faculty that's certificated may charter a school 50%. If the teachers say, hey, look, we want to turn this school into a charter school, or the community, 50% of the community can say, we need a school with a charter. But it's many hours. I don't want to stand up here and tell you that it's easy, because what happens is you become the board, you have to select a board of trustees or a board of directors to oversee that school. And the faculty needs to be committed, the community needs to be committed, and I see a lot of monetary commitment for that. But it can be done. It's a simple process on paper, but when you get all the stakeholders together, there are some issues that you do have to work through. One other thing that you need to know on a charter is you buy everything. There are certain fixed services. I mean, I don't want to think that this is all good, because I've learned a lot negotiating. For police services, there are fixed services, facility, gas, electric are in there. This is for unified. Truck mail, because we still have to give word of meetings, and our mail needs to be delivered to the site. IMC, where teachers check out books or videotapes. Those services I had to contract for. Food services. That was the first to go at our school. We'd much rather contract with the Marriott or an outside company to bring in food.
After all, this is La Jolla. Ramon's Barbecue.
So there are, different pieces that you need to contract, and you need to know, decide whether or not it's going to be union. The big issue when you select staff to staff that school, or if it's not going to be union, and how you write those pieces up. So that's just a very quick overview.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And you'll be here if people have questions.
Thanks, Mark. Just very quickly, I hate to burst your bubble, but you're not the first in La Jolla. Helix High School was the first comprehensive public high school to go to a charter school. To the credit of Ted Crooks, Gary Cass, and the rest of the Grossmont board members, And as far as I know, that's been very successful. So it has been done here, and the Grossmont board is very familiar, and the staff is very familiar with this. So you have some advantage if that is an option that you want to pursue.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I could just add one note to that, that if a school was built to serve this community, the Grossmont district would stand on, I can't guarantee, but I think it's highly likely that my fellow board members would stand as they have in the past, that we'd be quite happy to cooperate with the charter arrangement. The Helix charter was with the approval of the Grossmont High School District. It remains a school in the Grossmont High School District as part of the district. It is the largest charter school in California, and was the first comprehensive high school, as Diane said. Thank you very much. And we're very proud of that, and would have no problem with other schools that wanted their charter. And Helix it has been quite successful so far, and it's a very exciting experiment. It's not for every school, but it's largely up to the unique community of that school. But obviously the Grossmont High School District doesn't have any problem with it, because we've gone farther than any other district in the state.
Thank you. Just to let the audience know what we're going to do, I'm going to let the fellows on this side comment on the unification or charter school that we just talked about. As soon as they're done, then I would like to open it up to questions. The way I'd like to handle questions is if you'll come on up to this microphone and form a line and then ask the questions there, we'll do it that way. So as soon as they're done, you can head up anytime you want, get in line, but as soon as they're done, we'll open it up to audience questions. So, Rob, did you have any comments about either unification or charter schools?
I think just a clarification that you still have to have the buildings. So charter doesn't take away the need to have the buildings itself. It's really more of an operation and facilities issue.
Can I add one thing? One new concept that not very many people have heard about, and it really requires a large commercial space in an area like Alpine, but a new trend in charter schools is the idea of a commercial or a workspace charter school, where basically space that already exists is retrofitted for a charter school, and through a business improvement district or some kind of community district or charity, there's all kinds of public, private, and for-profit arrangements, but basically some kind of consortium of people that are concerned about the high school or the school offer their different advantages to get the workplace or the commercial space charter school going. And Miami probably has pioneered the concept. They have the most of these ideas of workplace schools, but basically what happens is a mall will rent the commercial space for $1, say, or the property owners will basically donate the amount as far as rent or lease space as a charitable contribution or at some minimal amount, so that the charter school isn't actually paying rent. And then that also takes, and of course it's very complicated because you still have a lot of issues as far as retrofitting buildings and meeting building codes and coming up with a facility. But it's one way, if you could identify in your community or in any community a large amount of commercial space, or if there was a large corporation, for instance, Ryder Corporation in Florida built a $6 million public high school, and they built it on their facility, and it serves, ironically, the largest majority of students that go there are from the Carnival, which is a cruise line that's across the way that has completely been able to kind of ride their coattails, but also all the neighborhood kids that live in that community go to that school, and Ryder, who's put all the money up for the school, actually has the fewest kids enrolled in the school. But in other words, the whole idea, though, is that there are innovative ways to get actual school facilities in space, and people are starting to come up with public-private nonprofit partnerships that address how you would get commercial space where you could actually site a school and who would pay for that. And it isn't always the public schools that actually will pay. Sometimes, especially if it serves the employees of a company or of a local downtown or a business area, there are incentives to actually give away space, especially if you have available space to give away where you're not actually putting out money, you're just giving up some revenue. So that's another way to do that.
And one local building that I've heard mentioned in that respect has been the Chanomatic building, which is down behind the Texaco, Dan Smith's Texaco down that road. Most people haven't been way back down there. there's what was the Channelmatic company operated out of that. And I've heard that facility bounced around periodically. All right, Dr. Ansel?
With the respect, was mentioned the unification brings more funding. I think it needs to be addressed. So, running a K-12 district is significantly more expensive than running a K-8 district. Basically, in an elementary district, you have a teacher in a classroom, and when you get to, as you move up middle school, you have more and more specialists, and you get into the high school program, you have a tremendous amount of staffing costs because your program, it goes right back to what we initially said, program. And program is going to drive staffing. And if you want all the extracurricular activities, that's really, it's been my experience, having worked in a unified district, it's the trickle-down effect. The high schools get the lion's share of the money, the middle schools are next in line, and the elementaries are last in line. So I think that's the issue of, there's the feeling you may get additional resources, you certainly do, but you've got to look at the other aspect, because with the high schools, of course, with the extracurricular, it even impacts such things as transportation. And you look at all your athletic, extracurricular, band, going. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed in terms of the financial aspect. And again, back to I think what needs to really be looked at is there's no disagreement. This community needs and wants a high school. What is the best way and the most expedient way to build a high school that offers a comprehensive, enriching program to our boys and girls in this community? And once that's discovered, I think that the path is very clear. We all join hands to go down that path.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Dr. Ansel just did say too as well. There is additional costs associated with the high school program. They have, obviously costly laboratory labs. They have also costly athletic programs and so forth. The cost to operate a high school, that's why they basically give you a higher revenue limit. That's why the state basically allocates more money, because they know the cost is definitely higher. So it's one thing you basically have to take into consideration. And I just wanted to elaborate on that. The other thing I did want to comment on was the charter schools. Charter schools in San Diego, we have, excuse me, we have about 34 charter schools in San Diego right at this moment. There's something like 350 statewide. They range everywhere from such comprehensive high schools as Grossmont has, all the way down to little small schools with 40, 50 children. They are catching on quite a bit. One of the schools that you might be interested in San Diego is the Escondido High School Charter office, run by Denny Snyder up there. Maybe some of you may know him. But basically, about 4 years ago, they kind of broke off from the Escondido High School District and formed their charter on their own. They have a commercial office space right down there in Valley Center Parkway, right close to the high school. They are in the process now of getting some land right across the street, an old shopping center. And also, they're basically incorporating as a 501c3 corporation. And basically, there is some financing available there. They're getting some municipal financing available on that, which basically is outside of regular bonds, not bonds that people would pay, but bonds that bondholders would pay, just like you would in an independent enterprise. So it's something that you might want to take a look at. I'm just saying, not that charter school may be your answer up here, but it certainly does deserve some more discussion maybe. And you might want to have someone like Denny Snyder come in and talk about his school, what he's doing up there. I think he's got a great program up in North County. His school is both independent study and it's a high school as well. He does both programs. But here again, a charter school can structure it in a variety of ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And I don't want to forget to thank you two again for flying. I know you were in Sacramento all day, and you flew down and came directly here, and I thank you both, Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Robinson, for it.
Actually, I don't
Into the
have,
mic.
I don't have, can you hear me? I don't have anything to add to the discussion right now. I think it's on the right focus, but as questions come up regarding funding and to what extent does the state play a role and can they play a role and what are the considerations and the conditions under which they would do that and what might be the difference between Rosemont trying to achieve that versus a unified Alpine trying to achieve that, I can respond to those kinds of questions. So I think that would best focus the thoughts and the comments that I can bring to the deliberations here.
Let me ask you one question. Lots have been said, not tonight, but in groups, about hardship funds and how they could be used if they are available. Could you explain hardship funds and are they available? Will they, if they're not now, will they become available? How do you qualify?
The state funding program for building new construction contemplates that when a district shows that it has eligibility for new construction, that the local district would come up with monies at the local level to pay half the cost of those facilities that they're eligible for. A high school, I don't know if a price tag's been roughly identified. Has one been roughly?
Yeah, we've had that discussion. I'm sorry you missed
And
that.
that's, so
Add to it.
what number are we at?
40 to 70 million is what was discussed.
That's a nice range. But let's use a number to carry out in a discussion. Let's say it's 40 million. So the state would contemplate, or the state program contemplates, that 20 million would come from the local level. Well, from where? From local bonds, to the extent that the district has the ability to float that much in local bonds. If they were able to come up with other revenues through other resources, redevelopment agreements, or if they were able to come up with private funds, that would be the avenue for coming up with the 20 million. However, the state also contemplated, the state program contemplated that there is quite a disparity in terms of the access to resources for different school districts. So it has a hardship provision, and it says that if certain conditions are met, then a portion or all of that 50% match, is it going to be better if I speak here? A portion or all of that 50% match then could be made up by the state. What are the requirements? The requirements are that the school district would show first that in terms of existing qualified indebtedness, bonds that are outstanding right now from that school district, that they wouldn't be, that indebtedness would equate to 30% of their bonding capacity. Bonding capacity is a mathematical calculation under the laws of the state of California. For Grossmont High School District, that bonding capacity is a pretty darn large number. For Alpine, even a unified Alpine, it's probably a dramatically smaller number. So the district, a calculation could occur to show whether, under either circumstance, the existing indebtedness met this 30% requirement. If it does, then the access to hardship funds, to the extent they exist, would be there. The other avenue is that if the district, even if it doesn't meet this indebtedness requirement, attempts a school bond measure and at least gets 50% plus one vote, then they would have access, if that bond measure failed or if it did not generate enough money, they would have access to some additional state monies to make up a portion of all of these matching funds. That's all called hardship. Today, State Allocation Board, the body that administers this program, it was acknowledged that we are running out of hardship money in the current state school building program at a very, very rapid pace. Right now, it's anticipated that that money may only last through the end of June. And the end of June is a very short time frame in the life of putting the steps in place that are required to access that kind of money. Unless additional monies are found for hardship, then we would be looking at a new state school bond measure and its provisions to set aside money for hardship. And that would be the avenue that would be available under either scenario here, a Grossmont scenario or an Alpine Unified scenario. You said the district qualified. So, we're rapidly running out. There is a hardship that we're rapidly running out.
All right, thank you. At this point, anybody that has questions, please come up. And the reason I'm asking you to use the microphone is that we're going to try to we're taping this, we want to make the tape available at the library for people who were not able to be here if they want to get this information. And so by using the microphone, we get what you ask on the tape. Larry, if you want to go up first, because I'd like you also, there were 3 people in our community that sort of spearheaded a drive, a petition drive. Some of you, many of you here may have signed the petition for a new high school. Larry Erdahl was one, Jay Harn was the second, and Ann Pierce was the third. And if you just want to speak briefly to that and where you are on those signatures and what that means, and then whatever your first question is.
Hi, my name is Larry Erdahl. First of all, we have somewhere between 4,500 and 4,600 signatures to unify high school in Alpine. And where those petitions currently are is in safekeeping, and we're just kind of sitting on them until we make a decision as to what to do. There's a very large turnout here, and I would encourage each and every person that's here to come join the high school committee meeting at a meeting here on April the 16th, at which Granger Ward is going to speak. And one of the things that Granger is going to show us, or at least help us here in Alpine, or the committee too, is how can our committee work together with the Rosemont School District to have a high school built here in Alpine. Having said that, my question is for Ken Clark, because you said something that concerned me, and that was you stated that you had hired or were in the process of hiring a company to take a survey. So my immediate question to take a survey is, what if they take this survey and they come back and say there's no interest at all for passing the bond in the Rosemont School District? What will you then do regarding the high school in Alpine?
That would be very difficult, because there are very, very few other funding sources available for that, and we do not have funds currently to run a high school. So without state funding and or matching funds to obtain those state funds, it would be difficult. I have no other source of funds other than.
Do we have a timing? I know you mentioned it earlier, you're still talking to folks who are going to do the survey. Is there a deadline date? You want it completed by a certain date, by summer?
They're developing that survey now. I would imagine within the next 3 months that they'll implement that.
All right, I asked this in a meeting with Granger Ward, and I'll ask it, you were there. Is it possible for perhaps the Alpine Committee to look at the questions or help with the questions?
This is a professional opinion poll. They're experts in the field. They've done surveys for bond issues and politicians all over the state, and maybe even in other states. I'm not sure of the propriety of allowing that information out before the survey is taken, but as Dr. Wood and Mr. Ward indicated, if that opportunity would not contaminate the information, that possibility exists, but we would rely on the professional opinion of the posters.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
One second, I'm sorry.
I was going to say Alpine did the same survey he's talking about, and your question was kind of a black and white answer. The survey really addresses what are people willing to pay and what would you support. So it would give Rosemont a better idea of what the public is really willing to pay. I don't think it's a yes or no answer. I think it's they'll give them back information and they say 50% of the people are willing to pay $20. Only 35% are willing to pay $50. So it starts establishing what amount of tax rate they can expect to have a majority of the people. But it doesn't come back to them and say no one's interested. It comes back and starts talking about what's called the tax threshold. And the tax threshold is what rate are the majority of the people willing to pass. So I don't think I've heard of anyone ever come back and say they're not willing to spend $1, per 100,000. The tax threshold has kind of moved from year. The economy drives that. The other taxes in the community do. Some of the things that have happened in the public, I really don't know what the recent tragedies are going to do to the public opinion. But I think what would be more likely would come back and say, well, they're maybe not willing to support $30, which is going to generate $178 million, but maybe they're willing to support $15, which will only support, bring in $90 million. And then at that point, Grossmont's going to have to make those decisions. Do we try to change our publicity? Do we change what we're doing? Do we go for the 90 million? Those are the types of things. But I don't think it's ever going to be a yes or no response to the survey. And in our case, we came back with the community was willing to support $25, but they weren't willing to support $30. So we sized our bond at $25. And they were willing to support these types of things, a track. That's why we have a track in the middle school. But they weren't willing to necessarily support a pool. That's why we don't have a pool at the middle school. So that's the information I think that comes back in the survey.
Thank you, Mr. Dotz.
Yeah, Stan Dotz. And my question is to Ken again, and this one is one that may be a different twist to it, but I was curious because I understand you dealt with maybe Lusardi and San Marcos on a developer-created high school. I just wondered if you could tell us if that's true, then some of the facts about advantages, disadvantages.
Okay, yes, we built two elementary school districts under the design and build concept where we selected an architect and a contractor with a guaranteed maximum amount to build that school. One thing, you're guaranteed that you will get a school on time because that contractor is allowed to select his sons exclusive of the bidding process, so that expedites that process. What you need to I guess, make sure of early on is that you have a quality builder that you can rely on, and also that guaranteed maximum amount is a fair price because you do not go out and bid, solicit bids for that. So there are some ed code sections that allow you to use some unique processes. And I believe there's another school, if I'm not mistaken, Tom, in San Pasquale, that is also using that mechanism. I believe the contractor is also deciding. Is that true? That's true. So there are some benefits in time, and time is money. You get a school on time. So you need to be assured that guaranteed maximum amount is a fair price because there's not competitive bidding in place, but it has.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you. We talked about unification, about Grossmont Building School, we talked about charter. I have a preference, however, my main goal is a high school. If it comes down to it, I don't care who runs it, I just want a high school up here. But I had a question. Dr. Ansel brought up a point I hadn't thought about. Some of the teachers had mentioned it, but I didn't understand what they were saying. He said that there's a trickle-down effect, that if you're unified, the high school gets the thrust of the money, then the middle school gets some, and whatever crumbs are left, the elementary school gets. Well, I think the last thing we want to do is degrade our elementary schools, because they're doing a great job. But I was wondering, we've never brought it up to my knowledge, supposing we didn't unify, supposing we formed a high school district, and is it possible?
Would like to respond to that? Well, you have a high school district. What do you think, Mr. Clark? Would you advocate our strategy? You said it's not a process for one school?
Just two high schools is what I'm thinking.
Well, I think he's saying in lieu of, aren't you?
Create their own high school district.
Right.
All the jurisdictions in the state of California now have legal boundaries with government boards and entities, so I don't know how you could carve out.
Well, if you don't pass the bond, could you shrink the boundary?
Okay, Mr. Naring.
Hi, my name is Ron Nearing, and my question is for Lisa Snell. Lisa, glad you could be here. I think that in order to maximize the likelihood that we can get a high school here in Alpine, we need to be as innovative as possible in terms of the decisions that are made to both construct the high school and in terms of operating the high school. And a lot of the old models for government doing business, how government does business, have been changing. I just read an article today on how the Detroit Police Department privatized changing the oil in their police cars. And they reduced their budget for changing oil in police cars by 70% by contracting out. Supervisor Jacob and her colleagues on the Board of Supervisors have been true leaders in the area of privatization and have provided superior county services while reducing costs to the taxpayer. Another idea might be, will the construction of the new high school, will bidding be open to merit shop contractors who constitute 80% of the construction industry, or will only the 20% that are unionized be able to contract and bid in? My question for you is, what innovations are you aware of through the Reason Public Policy Foundation and what innovations could be incorporated into a plan to build a high school that could keep costs down, improve services, and really maximize the likelihood that we could have a better high school at lower cost?
Thank you.
Well, you can have innovation at every level. There are examples of districts out there that have basically gone through every service and said, what is our core function here? Our core function is teaching and curriculum, so everything else from insurance to transportation to trash hauling is up for grabs. And I think a model to follow, the Houston Independent School District, which, as you all know, Rod Page, the former superintendent there, is now the Secretary of Education for the federal government. He was there as superintendent for around 8 years, I believe. And basically that's what he did when he started, is he went through top to bottom and he said, what are our core services, and everything else we can bid out and find someone that is their core service that can do it for a lower price. And so he basically was able to raise teacher salaries for 8 years in a row without actually raising the budget. And what I mean by that is by reducing costs for everything else, teacher salaries went up every year, but the overall amount that they were spending on education maintained. Now, that's a controversial idea. Privatization brings with it a lot of just, it has a bad rap in a lot of cases. Yet, more and more, the American School and University, which tracks privatization across the country, reports that now 100% of all school districts across the country contract out 1 to 5 services. And then as you have those percentages going down, you have some school districts that contract out 100% of their kind of ancillary non-core services. So really the whole range of saving money by being more efficient is open to a school district. And at Reason Public Policy Institute, we have a lot of how-to guides. We have lots of case studies on all kinds of school district contracting and privatization. We every year have a conference called Making Schools Work that look at trends in outsourcing. So if you're interested in finding out how to cut costs by looking at privatization and contracting out, certainly we have a wealth of information available that we'd be willing to share with you. And I think Ron makes a good point that you can raise money by lowering the costs of things that you currently do. And so that's a good avenue to consider.
Thank you very mued. Ted, I don't want to forget, you had a question for Mr. Crooks earlier, if you remember what it was.
Well, I just wanted to address that briefly. In a prior life, I was Vice President of Marketing for the second largest provider of services in schools in the U.S., a company called Service Systems, which is now part of Marriott. And so if anybody has questions about the details of how those contracts work, how we did food service for the Chicago schools, for example, and things of that sort, I'd be happy to talk to you if anyone wants to know about the details. It's a little different California.
Do you agree with it as a concept?
For this area?
Sure.
No. It depends on what the service is. For the ones I was involved with, I know I would have bid higher. First 3 years we lowered. After that, it's a little different story.
There's also an issue of cost.
We're certainly welcome to listen.
Lisa?
I mean, with privatization and outsourcing, there's an issue of performance versus cost. And one of the myths that is out there is that privatization is always cheaper. And in many cases, you're just buying a quality service. So you have to keep that in mind, is that because the quality goes up, sometimes the cost does go up. But when you do it on a system-wide basis, I think you are able to identify a lot of efficiencies, and there are certain services that, because of the laws governing the way that it's managed, they have inherent higher costs built into the system. So that's why a system-wide look at where you can find cost efficiencies is, I would recommend that.
And we have looked at a few, and Grossman, I'm sure will continue to. I would add also there are hybrid arrangements. For example, when I was on the board of the Mesa Spring Valley, we hired a food service contractor to do some of the management functions in the food service area, and that was very successful. And it also got a lot of support from the existing employees. So there are ways to do it very harmoniously that do lead to better. In that case in particular, the costs were reduced a little bit, but the main gain was improved service. And we judge that by the kids eating more off their plate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next question.
Just wanted to say that I just found out within the last couple of days that there seems to be this separation between people wanting to unify and people wanting to build this high school within the Gross Rock district. And it saddens me that in a community such as Alpine, where we usually work together, it seems like now we're going like this. We're in need of a high school now, and I think we need to look at the fastest way to build a comprehensive school. And I know that Al Haven's group has been working very hard for the last couple of years. And my first question is to him, and I would like to ask at what stage your group is at. I know you guys have been working very hard, and it seems like I come to this meeting expecting more information, and it's the same meeting I attended a couple of years ago. And that's very frustrating. I have children that are, it's like, maybe they can do it in 7 years. Okay, well, maybe, maybe
Well,
they can do it
ask a
faster.
specific question that you want to have.
Okay, I'd like to ask them what stage they're at. And my second question is, there's some talk of unifying after Grossmont will build a high school for us. And my question is, if that happens, don't we in fact absorb our share of the district's debt? Also, you talked about extra funds coming in with unification. It's my impression from meetings a while ago that we would absorb quite a bit of debt from the district, our share. So, thank you.
It's a good question. Let me answer the second part first of your question, which with regards to the idea of letting Grossmont build it and we would incorporate later. I made a proposal to Granger some time ago with that in mind. The idea wasn't that we would incorporate, but that we would, as a community, come together and work with Grossmont. Because if we're going to get this thing done, if it's going to get done, we've got to figure out how to work together as a community. And you said that exactly right. Grossmont, the last successful bond effort they had was '67. They've had two other attempts since, one in the '70s and one in the beginning of the '90s, if I'm not mistaken. And those failed. We need this bond measure if we as a community want it to happen. We need it to pass. The only way it's going to pass is if we come together as a community. You rightfully said that there is a division within this community, at least within those who are actively involved in wanting a high school. And the division, as I mentioned earlier, is unification versus Grossmont. So I made the proposal that if Grossmont would be open to this concept, put the high school, find a site, really diligently work to get the site in Alpine. By in Alpine, I mean within the Alpine Union School District. And then secondly, in advance, work out some arrangements by which at the end of, once the school is built, once it's built and operational, that the district would have, or the community of Alpine, would have a 10-year window to look at it, to investigate. Can we afford to unify? Is it something that even makes sense to unify? Is it something we want to do? Is Grossmont doing a good enough job that we don't even want to consider unifying? And at least have that 10-year window to look at it with a prearranged agreement. And the reason that I submitted that as a proposal was not simply to get unification done, but to give those who right now are creating this division, or unification versus Grossmont, an opportunity to come together and work together toward getting the high school. And again, I come back to the safety issue, which is my primary fundamental reason. I don't want 2 kids a year from Alpine to die on those roads anymore. I want a school in this community. And if it takes working a deal that's a little outside the 9 dots to come together as two communities or as two entities, then we should be open to that as a concept. And that's where that comes from. Now, as far as your time frame, which is another, I think, valid question, who'd like to speak to that? Based on where we are right now, if Grossmont goes forward with, let's say the community comes together, and we do work together, and Grossmont puts their bond down and gets the bond passed next March, which is their goal, what's the time frame on us having a high school here? And when I say here, by the way, when I say here, right now Grossmont is still talking pretty much the Granite Hills to Alpine corridor. That's why part of what this is all about is to emphasize, we don't want you to think of that end of the corridor, we want you to think of Alpine. Our kids have been bused enough. We want it in Alpine. And I think, do we have consensus here on that? Do we want it in Alpine? Okay, wait a second. Wait. How many do not want it or don't care? How would you phrase it then?
You've got freeway access, and you need to look at the surface roads. And I'm not saying anything from here to Blossom Valley is wrong.
Okay.
I don't want to say only in Alpine.
Okay.
I don't want to
That's
go
fine.
farther east. But you're eliminating when you said, you look at freeway access, you look at, where they built that church down there by Dunbar was a great big site. And every time something passes up, it's gone.
Sure, and there's another 88 acres down there that I know that they were looking at.
Yeah.
So that is a possibility. But let's say that the bond is passed, and they have a site, wherever it is, in that corridor, because again, they're looking, as far as Grossmont is concerned, they're looking at the Granite Hills to Alpine corridor. So if the bond is passed in March, and you're moving forward, what's the time frame on a high school being built to service that corridor?
Last chapter?
Well, I mean, is it...
Best we would need to...
you will be held to this.
No comment. If this was in our control and the best of circumstances, now I guess I'll give you some variables. One of the requirements is that we identify 3 sites and propose those to the State Department of Education. We need to do some preliminary environmental review of those to make sure that those sites would be acceptable. There will probably be a 2 to 3 month time frame to get those sites reviewed and approved through the State Department of Education. Land acquisition, do the final environmental reviews, and there's some new toxic requirements now as a result of Belmont High School in LA, which has extended the time frame. We're looking at 6 to 12 months there. Architectural planning and review, 1 to 1.5 years. There were some opportunities to reuse some plans depending on the site was selected from other districts that built high schools. State plan check and DSA review, 6 to 9 months, and we're really at their mercy and what their bin time is regarding that. Construction bidding and board award, 2 to 3 months. Construction phase, probably 2 years. So using those frames of reference, you're looking anywhere from probably 4.5 years to 5 years, 9 months, or almost 6 years, worst case scenario.
So worst case scenario, if the bond is passed in March, we could have a high school within 6 years.
6 years.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Steve Taylor. I'm the current chairman of the Alpine High School Citizens Committee. I wanted to address your concern about a division within the community. I would not call it a division. Let me give you a little history. The committee, when it was formed 2 years ago, really decided on 2 tracks that they were going to take in order to expeditiously move forward in getting a high school up here. Those 2 tracks were unification and we're working with the Grossmont High School District. We proceeded along those 2 tracks in order to kind of move the process forward, and I think it's been very successful. We've had a very good relationship with the Grossmont District, and we also went ahead and pursued the idea of unification. We also are educating ourselves. We met with the superintendent, I believe, of the Valley Center School District, and we discovered that that was kind of a marriage of convenience. It was a little bit different than our situation up here. I really would like to downplay the idea of this big split. The Alpine High School Citizens Committee really is a microcosm of our community as a whole. We have worked together very well towards the common goal of getting a high school up here as expeditiously as possible. I think we're moving in that direction. The Grossmont District has been very supportive and have really come out and identified a concrete way to get a high school up here. And we certainly support those efforts.
Thank you. Next question.
Can I expand on that question? Because I think she was asking how quick comparative between the high school and the unified. And the timelines that Ken addressed, money in hand. You have to have money in hand to start planning the process. You don't just need money to build the school, but you need several million to plan it, because you have to buy the land, you have to go through all those. So if you're comparing a high school versus a unified, you also have to look at when the unified would exist and when they could actually produce finances, money. And once that occurs, then the timeline that Ken was talking about is the same. So whether I have money in my hand as an elementary or a unified, or they have as a high school, that's going to be that same time frame. But what's going to take time is to actually unify. And I don't know if there's a question of how long unification would actually occur before we started unification.
Or even according to Lisa, if we would meet some of the criteria.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that the ballot measure was put on even to start the unification process, would probably be, the ballot measure would have to go on. Basically, we'd have to go to the state, would have to go to our county board of education, do a series of public hearings and so forth. We'd have to go to the state board, and I would assume, and they only unify as of July 1st of each year, so I assume that probably the earliest that this could happen would be the unification process I'm talking about, not the building, would be July of 03, July 2003. It started like today. So even the unification process does take some time.
Hi, yes, I'm a parent here in Alpine, Mary Davis, and when I hear the talk about the unification versus going with Grossmont, to me that seems like a lot of cart before the horse. I think most parents are interested in supporting what will be most expeditious in getting us a high school in Alpine, and then we can worry about the details in that 10-year period, like you said. I had 3 main questions, 2 of which have already been answered: cost and location, or time frame. Location. What are the sites being currently looked at or bantered?
Let me, if I may, make a general statement, and then we'll flip it to Grossmont, I guess, to start with. They're a little afraid, even talking to the high school committee about specifics on sites, the fear being if they let people know what the site is, whoever owns the site will up the ante. And that's probably fairly accurate. So that's why we have the WeApply here, and we're happy you're still here. You're hearing that all of our troubles are in this one particular area. So, but that being said, can you give us any general comments, perhaps, Mr. Clark? For example, you are looking in Alpine?
We've identified some sites in Alpine and in the Blossom Valley area corridor, some specific sites.
But did I give a proper reason for your giving such an ambiguous answer? Anybody else like to comment on that or have any knowledge of the site? Okay, thanks.
That's exactly what Alpine did also. We understood we would only get opposition by identifying the site. There would not be support, there would only be opposition. So it was basically we had money in hand by ourselves.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm Heather Adams. I feel like I'm the high school representative here. So I just had a few questions and comments. Have you ever tasted high school food? It sucks. So And also, I'm from Hopatool. It takes a half an hour to drive to school and an hour bus ride. Please don't make Mountain Empire students go through that anymore, because it's the same thing for them. Are we going to expand the Alpine Union School District to involve Mountain Empire students who live farther from the school? And if the Hopatool kids are going to have to go through any more pain with driving, because my mom even had to drive all the way to school, and that was way back when, I don't know when. I don't know, she rode a horse.
Free electricity.
And also, I would like for my kids to be able to go to a school that I go to, I go to Grand Hills. Are we going to have enough drama programs, chorus programs? Are we going to have enough students to have that? Because our drama program right now at Grand Hills is kind of declining, and I know at Still Cannon they don't even have one. Are we going to have that right away, or are we going to have to wait until we have students interested in it and a teacher?
Okay. Who'd like to respond to that?
Obviously, there's some economies of scale requirements, what curriculum, what type of school will be developed here that will be done jointly with the community and with curriculum specialists. She had several questions on that.
Food.
An open campus or not, that would be a decision, I think.
Yeah, probably not, though. That's my guess.
Regarding Mountain Empire students, I think most of the 42 or 43 school districts in the county have an open inter-district transfer, not that you can go to any school you want, but in most cases you can go to a school in the district, so there's been free access.
Are any of your schools open in Grossmont District? Open in...
Yes. Open campuses or open for your district transfers?
No, open campuses.
No.
Yeah, no. Okay, thank you. Question?
Hi, I'm Terry Ragsdale, and I'm also on the high school committee. And to reiterate Steve and what Mark said earlier, I think we've always been with the common goal of getting a high school in Alpine, and the division basically along the parallel paths of unification in Grossmont has been research. And one part looking at unification and bringing information, and one part looking at Grossmont and bringing information. But we always have worked well as a committee, and we invite you to join us also. One question I have is, how much did Steel Canyon cost to build? And I know the land was more expensive, was expensive, but basically how much was it to build?
I don't have the exact figure, I'm sorry to say. I think it was in the $30 million range.
It was not counting all the site costs, it was 42.
42 million.
Before litigation.
But that, and then that is not...
Was no site cost.
No site cost. No site cost. So that was just the building, no site cost. And they don't have a football stadium.
Well, we have a field.
We have a
no
field,
league.
but no stadium. No pool. And, a lot of the facilities that I think that we as Alpine parents, which I am, would want in a high school. So, based on Steel Canyon, we're probably looking to get what we want in the $60 to $70 million range. And if...
Let me add one thing that historically, several, as you know, a lot of Grossmont schools have pools, for example, but none of them were built by the district. And it's very common, it's kind of a tradition in the district that as long as we build a school with a site for a pool, Steel Canyon's got the spot, we know where the plumbing goes, and we can raise the money for it from the kinds of cooperative partnerships Lisa was talking about, we'll build it as we have other schools. Likewise, the bleachers and snack bar facility and all the rest. Valhalla, for example, was all built that way. They've just added some things that have just been finished off. And as each school gets built, typically we look for a lot of those extra amenities. But when you're talking about the overall amounts of money involved, frankly, we try to take those things that the voters are less likely to find attractive and that are also less expensive, and leave those and put the focus on those things that voters see as important and that are the big, heavy infrastructure costs to get the solid school there, knowing that we can get some support from the community to do some of the extras. It's a lot easier to get people to chip in toward the bleachers and the snack bar than it is toward the larger sewer pipe. So it's a lot more expensive.
Thank you. Next question. Was this a follow-up on your food question?
I just had a question. Our school right now has, sometimes they have like Little Caesars has pizza sometimes, but it costs like $2.25 to get a pizza and it's like this big. So if, as students, we recommend to have maybe a Subway put in our school or maybe a Taco Bell or something, and we will pay the amount for it because that can also be put back into the school for maybe students who can't pay for that. They can be able to have better food if we're going to pay for that. Would you be willing to put that into consideration?
There are districts in the county that have concessionaires that come in, whether it be Domino's Pizza or Taco Bell or whatever, and provide food for students.
You consider Taco Bell as part of the food chain?
Would those be permanent residents, or would they be like once a week they'll come in with this kind of food?
I think we could work out anything. As long as they had the high-aid lunch program from the federal government, so we receive reimbursement.
Thank you. Mr. Haven? And by the way, just so everyone knows, we're not going to carry this on forever. It'll be over exactly at 9:30 at the latest. If we get done with a few more questions and that's it, then we'll end it there. We're just not going to go on indefinitely. The latest it will be is 9:30. I promise you that.
I just like to really thank the group who came out here. This has been, for me, the most productive exchange of information, and I think pretty useful for everybody. And having said that, I'd just like to put in a commercial. I also serve on the board of this facility. We met last night, and we're starting our membership campaign. And we invite each one of you to become a member of the community center. This building, talking about the cost of building, this building is $2 million. $2 million, and there's no tax monies at all. It's all raised by memberships. $35 a piece, and invite everybody in Alpine to join.
And I'm doing my part by renting it here tonight. Yeah, Mr. Smith.
I'd just like to, I've lived here for 28 years. Mary and I have raised 3 children, gone through Alpine schools and Grossmont schools. And I've seen significant improvement in the Alpine schools, the curriculum, the teachers. They're great. And I want to thank publicly Jerry Ansel for all he has done and the board over recent years to make our schools better, because the statistics show that. Also, Mr. Crooks, Valhalla was built with a pool and not a gym. And one of the things Grossmont has done, because I was the principal there when we built the stadium, and we raised half the funds, and the district loaned us half the funds, and they're in the process of paying back. So having a larger district does allow some options to hopefully get their support, and they are paying it back over 6 or 8 years, but it is another option to get facilities that may not be there on opening day. And I would just want to say thanks to Mark. I think we need these forums. I would hate to see our community get torn apart like Lakeside over unification or non-unification. And I think, I'll be out of the district by the time the school is built. I just feel like, I think most of you, we want a high school, and we want it to be the best high school for our students, and let's go after that. Thank you.
Brian started his teaching career while I was in high school at Mount Miguel High School in Grossmont District. 6 years ago.
My name is Tish Nielsen, and I'm a parent in this area as well. I know a lot of people in this room. I look around and I see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm sitting here filled with a lot of frustration tonight. And I didn't come to the high school meetings 2 and 3 years ago because my kids were still in elementary school and I still had a baby at home, and I thought, well, gosh, I'll be high school by then. This is not about me, this is about them, because they all have older kids. And as I'm sitting here tonight as a 7th grader, I'm realizing, gosh, I'm too late already for that one. And I have 2 more coming up, and I'm adding the years thinking, okay, the people in this room, probably their kids aren't going to that high school. I mean, we're the ones that are here listening and wanting this, and it just seems like it's taking such a long, long time. And then you say, well, the bond issue in March of 2002, and I'm thinking that's a whole another year away with nothing to be done, and just sitting and waiting. And I would like to see us be a more proactive community, thinking, what can we do in those next 12 months so that if the bond does go through and that money becomes available, that we haven't sat around for 12 months with idle time where maybe we could have, I guess maybe I'm going under the assumption that it's going to pass. And if we have that idea that it is passing and that we know it's going to go, okay, is there anything we can do in the meantime so that we can cut a year off, cut a year, 2 years off? What can we do to reduce these time frames where things normally take 9 months? Can they take 5 months for us? That's my frustration. Is raise your hand if you have a child in this room that you've already missed the boat. I mean, I think there's a lot of them. I mean, I know you, and that's frustrating.
And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons I wanted to get the forum out here. And people were giving me a hard time about it, like, why bring it out now? Well, I want to bring it out now so people know where we are. Like the woman who made the comment that nothing new has happened. Well, maybe there's a message in that. And maybe it is time to try to figure out what we need to do as individuals.
Well, because I thought 2 years ago, just from the trickle-down effect, what I was hearing was that it was going ahead, and now I'm finding out that it hasn't been going ahead. I don't want us to be standing up here in 3 years from now finding out that we haven't done it again.
Yeah. Is there anything that the individual citizens can do in this next 9-month, 12-month period? Yeah. One thing he's mentioning is on April 16th, when the high school committee meets with Granger Ward, be there and let him know your thoughts and where you are on it. That would be helpful. At 7 o'clock in this building. Any other things that the local citizenry can do?
Help pass the bond.
Yeah, and I was going to thank you, and I was going to comment on that. Don't assume that bond's going to pass. Again, the last 2 that they put forward did not. And let me add to that, the economy, what's going on with it right now? And if it starts tanking the way it's looking right now, I don't know if that bond's going to be an easy sell. So if we truly want a high school, and if the community comes together behind Rosemont, don't assume anything that it's going to pass. It's going to take an awful lot of work from an awful lot of people to make that thing happen. So it would be the wrong assumption to think it's going to.
So first, wait,
I know.
then
Yeah, and I'm not hearing anything from the group that you can do other than to perhaps send letters to Grossmont, let them know that you want it here, to Granger perhaps, Mr. Clark, let them know what your feelings are, what your thought, what you want in the school, that kind of thing. But other than that, I don't. It's a time frame. One of the frustrating things I've found during my little bit of time now involved with government, and that's kind of what this is, it moves slower than anything I've ever known in my life. It's the slowest, it is so inefficient the way it moves. And I think Ron Nearing made the comment about Diane has been putting some efficiency in county government, and it needs it. It needs more of a business thinking, business way of thinking. So, Jay.
I had to say something. My name is Jay Harn, and I'm on the high school committee. I'm the 3rd member of the high school committee that's got going, and I'm also one of the petitioners. So my name's on a petition. A couple things that need to be said about the length of time. It took us a long time to get 4,500 signatures. We were, volunteers, and finally towards the end, we had to get some people paid help to really get those petitions going. And that was a significant amount, and I was surprised because my daughter wasn't even in kindergarten when we started this process, and she's in 2nd grade. So we do know that it takes a long time. We are also going through our own frustrations with trying to find things. But there's also another thing is when this whole process started, there was an entirely different Rosemont administration that was involved. And right now we have a great administration, and Granger Ward has met with us many times, and they're very, very open to what's happening up here, and we really appreciate that. But the little thing we have, the ace in the hole we have, is we have 4,500 signatures for unification. And I'm a firm believer that one of the reasons that Grossmont is talking about an issue and is talking that something's going to happen as far as the high school is concerned is that for that simple fact. We have 4,500 signatures sitting in our pocket. And those will be there. And we just want to have things happen quickly, as every one of you do. But we're looking for the best way and the most promising venture, I guess, would be the best way to say it.
Thank you, Jay. Please.
Hi, my name is Kathy Lee Burnett, and there's a bunch of little things I'd like to make a comment on. First off, having lived through the decisiveness that went through Lakeside during the Lakeside Union School District's attempt to take over El Cap, I can tell you, as having a student at the school and a husband who's a teacher, that was a really rotten 2 years. And to say that, oh, we'll look at this for 10 years in review, I couldn't even imagine a community having to go through that, because it pulls the community apart. And people have strong issues on unification, and I know you got your signatures, but I think the issue maybe a lot of people said is, I just want a high school. And I think if you went back and said the pros and cons of both systems, and from what I've listened tonight to, the only district right now that could support building this high school is Grossmont, and that's the only one. So my question then is, let one district take over and let them get going on it, instead of playing this, are we going to go unified or are we going to go with Grossmont? We need to decide as a community which way we want to go. And listening to the numbers and listening to the fact you'll have a bigger bunch of people paying for the bond, it makes it sound like that's the only way it can happen. And I think that needs to get through, and then we need to tell people, but we're wasting time here saying, is it going to be unified or is it going to be Grossmont? Another thing I'd like to point out is, you know, Hamul was in a situation 5-10 years ago. And why did they go unified? There had to be a reason. Lakeside people voted it down. And there's a number of reasons why, as a teacher myself, I'm not in favor of unification. And so those are just things I'd like to toss out and people need to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Hi there, my name is Gary Julien, and I have been a resident of Alpine since December of 1994. I live on the east end of Hattool Valley Road up near Descanso, and my kids got on the bus at 20 after 6 and went down the hill, and they came back, and they were back at 4:30. And I told myself when I came to Alpine I was going to do something about the situation. And I'm going to do something about the situation. Diane let the C word out of the bag, and Owen happened to mention my employer. I have been working for the last 4.5 years for Escondido Charter High School. We have a model program in Escondido, and some of the gentlemen who are on the high school planning committee we met with a year ago. Dennis Snyder spoke to the committee, and things have been a little bit quiet up until just recently. I just wanted to let you know that we are putting the finishing touches on the charter for Alpine Charter High School. And if Grossmont Union would like to have us, we'd love to go with you. Or if Alpine Union and the board there would love to charter us, we'd like to go with you. We want to embrace our community and have you come along with us. We anticipate opening up in September with a full-fledged curriculum that is aligned with state standards, the UC requirements. I've been there for 4.5 years. I know what I'm doing.
Why don't you give the location?
The location, right now we have a building that is in the final approvals phases. There's no dirt being dug yet, but it's across the street from Wana Pizza. We are looking, and it was nice to know about the building up here, but that's the creativity of having a charter school, is we're going to be looking around, and I'm going to rely on you guys to be looking around. You come on board with us, and we're going to help something get started right away. And I just have a question, not for the committee here, but for you guys. How does Alpine Charter High School Coyotes sound to you? I think it sounds pretty good, and I appreciate being here. Thank you. Right now we're looking at opening with 391 students. I've written a program for 391 students, so enrollment would be limited. We have an ad coming out in the Alpine Sun on the 5th of April, and we are going to be
out and about with our brochures in front of Daniel's Market on March 12th.
And the facility used to be the video store up there, is that correct?
No, actually, it's across the street. It's a lot right now, Mark. And we have a 2-story building going to be built. It's going to be an office building. And we're going to start there and see how we expand throughout the community. I'm looking forward to using the community as our campus. And we're talking about pizza, how about 20 different cafeterias where we have Mexican food and Carl Jr. And I am a frustrated thespian. I was a performing arts minor at San Diego State University, and I've envisioned a dinner theater at Viejas. I don't know why, but hopefully we can talk to some of the people from the Cubiatas and who get something started in performing arts. Thanks. I'm going to give you my card.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Juskowitz, and you can blame this all on me. Because about 12 years ago, Jerry, I think I came up to you when my son was in kindergarten. And I says, we got to get a high school up here. I don't know how we're going to do it, but someday we're going to do it. And it got to the point where he ran away from me every time he saw me at AES. And I says, Alpine Heights High is going to be a reality someday. And I want to thank all of you for coming here. My son was in kindergarten then. He is at Granite Hills as a senior and trying to get through this last semester to graduate. And I'd like every one of you tonight to tell only 10 friends. Have them tell 10 more and have them come to the meetings. We're growing in Alpine. You can see it. It's from the casino. It's from the Border Patrol coming here. It's from people that want to get out of the city and come up to our community to relax, to retire. You can see the prices of the homes have gone up dramatically. But we're going to need a facility up here, and we need to stay united. I want to thank everybody for coming up here. I know I've been in the background. I haven't been to the meetings lately because I've had other commitments on Monday night. But I still have been out there pushing the pavement, guys, even though I don't have, the handouts and have everybody sign. I'm still out there talking, and I want everybody else to do this. We need to unite, we need to come together, and we can pull this through. And thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. Concluding comments from anybody here on the panel? Anybody like to say anything, Supervisor? No? I want to just end it by thanking everyone on the panel and thanking all of you. The last forum that I moderated in Alpine was with Diane, and it was about 13 years ago, and it was on illegal immigration. And it was standing room only, and I will tell you this, my opening line was, we're here tonight to look into possible solutions to illegal immigration. One guy stood up and said, there's only one solution, kill the blankety blank. That's how the meeting started. So I want to compliment you, and thank you in advance for not starting this meeting in the same way, and for being civil and being the absolute wonderful people that I know Alpine is and represents. So thank you for being here. Chuck?
I just don't know if you're all aware of it, but I'd like to thank Mark Price for underwriting this entire expense from the